Xbox. Oh, Xbox. I love you. You know I love you with all my heart. But sometimes you make it so hard to love you. We all know Xbox is going through the worst moment in its history, and it's just one bad decision away from Satya Nadella, Microsoft's CEO, taking Xbox to a dark alley one day and... But why did this happen? Can it be avoided? Does Xbox still have any hope? Hi friends, I'm Shura, and this is Shura's Works. Today, we'll explore why Xbox is in the poop. It all started with the Xbox One. Xbox had just come off the 360 and felt like it could conquer the world, so they started imposing too many rules and mandatory things on their new console, and everyone hated it. Then PlayStation did the exact opposite of what Xbox did, and everyone loved it. And here's the problem. At this point, digital game libraries started to exist. From then on, you didn't have to buy discs, you could just download the games, and that's it. So everyone downloaded their games on PlayStation and left Xbox behind. And by the time Xbox tried to win back its customers, it was already too late. That's how the previous generation went, and then came the generation of the PS5 and Xbox Series S and X, where Xbox had to win back its customers, and it would do so with the most brilliant idea they'd ever had, Game Pass, the Netflix of video games, an offer you couldn't refuse. Being able to play any game you wanted through a subscription, without risking anything in return. If the game was bad or ugly, no problem, just uninstall it and play another one. It was magnificent. But they had another problem. They didn't have enough games to fill the service, so the studio buying frenzy began. Xbox started buying studios left and right, acquiring their games and adding them to its catalog, and for a while, it was good. Everyone was happy, everyone was content, and it seemed like Xbox was taking the lead in the console war while PlayStation had no stock and no big exclusives or new games for its new PS5, which, by the way, still doesn't have them, Mr. Remake 5. Now, the problem is that this worked with the good games those companies already had, but the moment Xbox took over, something strange started happening with those companies. The woke wave is undeniable, it hit like a hammer. This politically correct, non-binary, don't offend anyone stuff became a flag, and they started forcing trans and DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion elements into games that didn't need them, games that had never been like that before. They started making female characters ugly on purpose, using inclusive language, and making the villain always a straight white male. And look, Xbox wasn't the only one, as Square Enix, Ubisoft, PlayStation, and not just in video games, everyone in the entertainment industry started doing it. But the problem is why they did it. Well, it's really simple. They needed to expand their customer base. That's it. It's not that these companies actually believed in or understood the whole LGBTQ+ wave or feminist causes, none of that. What they wanted was to attract more customers, have more clients, and that's where the term modern audiences was born, referring to a hypothetical group of people, hypothetically huge, that includes all the young people and children of the world, hypothetically. Now, why do I always say hypothetically? Well, because those modern audiences you're talking about, are they in the room with us right now? The thing is, the group of people who actually like this stuff, the modern audiences, isn't a huge group of potential customers at all. In fact, it's an almost non-existent group of customers, it's extremely small. Because it turns out that activists and all these modern audiences don't like buying video games, watching superhero series, or fantasy shows, none of that. These people just like to complain, and that's it. So they didn't attract more customers by trying to sell to them. But the magical thing is that along the way, the studios did fill up with people from that collective, executives, designers, developers from these modern audiences. And in the end, it became a snake eating its own tail because it's a person from this modern audience making stories for a modern audience. So it's a dude running a giant studio, making games for its own audience of 4 dudes. So only 4 dudes play it, but they're using the money, time, and resources meant for games aimed at millions of people. And the thing was trust. The reason this worked and kept working for so many years was that people already loved Xbox, they already loved PlayStation, they already loved Marvel, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. These were already beloved franchises, so they kept selling over and over, bought by the same audience, because they had hope. Well, the last installment was crap on a stick, but this one's the good one, this one. Oh, no, it's also crap on a stick. Well, this next one's the good one. Oh, no, same thing. In fact, worse than the last crap, this one even has peanuts and corn. And so they kept feeding us garbage, after garbage, after garbage, after garbage, after garbage, until people said, you know what? No more. And that's the moment we're living in right now. And it's an extremely dangerous moment because they're facing the loss of customer trust. And that's the worst thing that can happen to any company. It's not bad sales, it's not a stock market crash, it's not a fire, an earthquake. No, the worst thing that can happen to a company is that its customers no longer believe in it. Look at Disney, a huge company with literally a century of history building this trust past, positioning itself as the best entertainment company in the entire world, and in just 5 years, it went completely bankrupt. Now they're begging people to watch their movies, their shows. But that's not going to happen, at least not for many years, because people no longer have faith in them. People now associate those shows and movies with low-quality stuff, woke discourses, and, most importantly, boring stuff. Because that's always been the problem with woke stuff. It's not the LGBT and all that. No, it's that their stories, their games, are boring. Believe me, if every woke story that came out was a banger, an amazing series, then people would say, oh, another movie with a strong, alone, independent and detergents, female protagonist, let's watch it, dude, let's watch it because these movies are incredible. But no, when you see one like that, you know it's going to be boring, and at best, it'll be meh. And that's the worst thing that can happen and what's happening now. Because, no matter how much Ubisoft releases the most mega game of all time, something that even Elden Ring can't compare to, no one's going to play it, because no one trusts that company anymore. Same with Square Enix, which, out of all the games it had, now only sells one, and that's it. And the same is happening with Xbox. Look, I swear to you, even though I have Game Pass, every time Xbox Studios release a super narrative game with spectacular graphics and all that, I'm the first to say, meh, I'd rather play Borderlands again, a game from like 10 years ago. I'd rather start my 5th playthrough of Lies of P. Hey, you've already beaten it 5 times in a row. Yeah, I know. Oh look, a little shooting game, pixel art style, I'm there. No, wait, this game cost millions and millions to make, has water graphics with better textures than the water in my neighborhood pond. Yeah, but T's boring. Meanwhile, Hades is in 2D isometric and it's a masterpiece. Meanwhile, 2 Russians with $4 and a piece of gum made this dating simulator, and everyone loved it. And that's because people no longer have confidence. So the moral of the story is, Xbox should, before making super graphic games with a message and metaphors, and stuff like that, make games that are simply fun. And that's it. Not forever, at least for a season, a year or 2. Let them only release hi-fi rush-like games for a while. If when they already have the trust of the customers again they want to release Hellblade 3, now it's personal, go ahead. But as long as you don't have the trust of your customers, don't risk so much money, time and employees on something that no one is going to play. Buying companies to make bad games and then shutting them down. The acquisition of Activision Blizzard King, the biggest purchase in the history of video games, so big that with that money you could buy entire countries, so big that it would change the history of the world as we know it, so big that PlayStation and even several world governments tried to stop it because if Xbox buys them, they'll become the absolute king of video games, and it would be unfair competition. But Xbox fought tooth and nail for years to achieve its goal, and PlayStation said it would be the apocalypse because it turned out to be crap. Everything turned to crap. Blizzard was a company that already had tons of problems, and after the acquisition, they released garbage, more garbage, and even more garbage. Maybe 1 or 2 good games. But that doesn't seem to matter because, for example, Hi-Fi Rush was an absolute masterpiece, and the next day they shut down the studio because they're geniuses. And then they released Avowed. Oh my god, the most disastrous acquisition in the history of video games. To put it in perspective, it's like a soccer team spending all the money in their continent to buy Neymar, Mbappe, Messi, and Ronaldo, thinking these players would make their team invincible for the next 20 years, and the next day they all get injured, break their legs horribly, and can never touch a ball again. And the money? What money? Gone. That's what the Activision Blizzard acquisition was. Not just another nail in the coffin, but a whole box of giant nails for your coffin. So, at first, they kept buying companies that had good games at the time, before the woke virus dragged them all into the abyss. The plan was that with all these companies and exclusives, everyone would want to buy an Xbox. But since no one wanted those bad games, they kept buying PlayStations. So Xbox said, okay, we've got the Game Pass users hooked, they're staying, but they don't buy games because of Game Pass. So let's start selling our exclusives on PlayStation, Nintendo, and Steam. It's a clear move. If the mountain won't come to Mohammed, then Mohammed must go to the mountain. I don't think it's a bad idea, not at all, but the problem is that it's a short-term solution. There's only a limited number of exclusives they have right now, and once they run out of good exclusives and only have bad games left, they'll start sinking again. So, selling their games on other consoles is a good idea, but it'll only give them a little more air, maybe 2 or 3 more years of life. And why do I say life? Game Pass is unsustainable in the long run. Game Pass is Xbox's cornerstone right now, their only lifeline, the only thing keeping it afloat. It's a fantastic service, but you know it, I know it, and everyone knows it's unsustainable in the long run, because continuously adding amazing games at the same price is impossible, and we've seen cases like this year. We're in January and February now, and the games that came to Game Pass were very meh. There were some interesting ones, like Shady Part of Me, which was very cute. I was really looking forward to Eternal Strands, but it was meh, with its woke non-binary characters, and it wasn't even in Spanish. It was dubbed in 7 languages, but not Spanish. Very inclusive, huh? Long live diversity, but the language of the slaves. Maybe another day. It's even dubbed in Portuguese. And Avowed, which was supposed to be Obsidian's biggest game ever, was a flop. Look, I'm done. And the rest of the games, well, they're okay, but none of them are. I don't know, Palworld last year was a hit. Hi-Fi Rush, Atomic Heart. In previous years, there were bangers during these months. And that's one of the problems with Game Pass, it's a bit random. Some months you get incredible, amazing games, and other months you get meh games, or even Avowed. What I'm saying is that it's impossible to keep everyone happy, and there will always be people leaving the service because of that. Eventually, they'll run out of good games, and there will be months and months of bad games until users start saying, you know what, I don't need this service every month. Having it for a month or 2 a year is enough, and then Xbox will instantly go bankrupt. So they have to be super careful with that, and especially if they want to raise the price, because obviously, it's going to keep going up and up. It's not because they're evil, it's just how inflation works. But to raise the price and still keep users, you have to counteract inflation by releasing good games. They don't even have to be expensive, but they have to be games people like. I swear, with what Xbox spent on Hellblade, Starfield, Avowed, with what they spend on just one of those games, they could make 7 Hi-Fi Rush games. It doesn't have hyper-realistic graphics, but have to be fun, with interesting characters, simple and great mechanics, and it makes you want to play it over and over. Nintendo's games have the worst graphics of these 2 generations combined, and they sell like hotcakes. They sell like there's no tomorrow, because what matters in a game isn't the graphics. For that, go watch a movie. What matters in a game is that it's fun to play. It's something anyone with a controller in their hands can see, but somehow, executives with master's degrees and PhDs in marketing and game development still don't get it. Xbox now says that everything is an Xbox, abandoning the concept of a console and letting you play from anything, a PC, a laptop, a phone, your microwave, a box of oranges, whatever you want. And look, I think this is an excellent idea. In fact, that's where they should be heading now, making Game Pass a cloud service where you can play remotely. The problem is, what about Latin America? We have crappy internet. Or countries in Africa and more modest parts of Europe that don't have the same internet as the UK or Japan. Well, they could solve that by still selling an Xbox specialized in cloud gaming, with AI assistance to boost communication. So, great, the plan works, we're saved. Well, not quite. Because the real problem with Xbox isn't its console. The problem is that they have nothing new to sell on it. And if you set up a cloud service, no matter how great it is, no one's going to buy it if there's nothing amazing to play. But of course, several companies are realizing that Xbox isn't selling, and if it's not selling, there aren't many customers there. And if there aren't many customers, why should I spend millions and have my engineers program games for Xbox? I'm not making sales there, so I'll just program games for PC and PlayStation, maybe Nintendo, and leave Xbox aside. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what's happening very recently with games like Black Myth and others that are only being made for PC and PlayStation, not Xbox. And they use the excuse that the Xbox Series S isn't powerful enough, and their game has these graphics and, oh, come on. The Series S runs Lies of P, a beautiful game, Atomic Heart, Hellblade, Forza Horizon, which is also an amazing graphic game. Performance and power are just excuses. The truth is, it's not worth it. They'd almost spend more programming for Xbox than they'd make selling on Xbox. And that's why they come up with excuses to avoid looking bad, to not saying we're only interested in money, period. So if more and more games do this, then another problem will arise. What's going to happen to Game Pass? Because fewer and fewer games will be released for Game Pass until only their own studios are left. But those studios already have no trust, and people aren't playing their games, so there'd be no point in keeping Game Pass for them. And boom, Xbox's cornerstone would collapse. And that's not even considering competition. Look, the console war is over, and only PlayStation and Nintendo are left, and they don't even compete with each other. With PlayStation's new strategy of also abandoning America, practically the entire video game market will be in Asia, with indie games filling the gaps. So, the strategy Xbox wants to adopt now is to start selling its games in Game Pass in Asia, ramping up advertising in games there, so the Japanese, Chinese, and Korean markets become the new players, because over there, they love video games almost as much as we love soccer and the national team. But, Phil, Uncle Phil, my dude, you couldn't sell your Western games to Westerners. How are you going to sell those games to Asians who already have games 10,000 times better than yours? Plus, what if What if Tencent or some other Asian company said, hey, this Game Pass thing isn't a bad idea. Let's make our own and sell it with our games. And they put Black Myth, Wukong, Fallen Feathers, Tides of Annihilation, Lies of P, and its sequels, and all the other games that look, well, like that. And meanwhile, Xbox has. It has the girl from Fable. And PlayStation has the girl from Intergalactic. Dude, everyone and their grandma would jump on the Chinese Game Pass, and then they'd counter Xbox with cloud gaming, saying, okay, let's make a virtual console where people in the West can connect from their phones, PCs, TVs, and that's it. They'd steal what little Xbox is left. And it wouldn't be hard. They don't even need a mega catalog of thousands of games. They just need 10 or 15 good ones, and every month or two, they add a new banger, and boom, they're on par with the current Game Pass. If that were to happen, and I hope it doesn't, but if it does, that would be the definitive and absolute end of Xbox. The only thing left would be for Microsoft to shut it down directly, or for this new Chinese Game Pass company to eventually buy Xbox or make a deal with them. And that's it, the end. But after all this, after fall, does Xbox have any salvation? Is there any way to avoid this horrible fate? Well, yes, of course, it's just 7 words, pull your head out of your butt. I've said it many times. Fixing all this is really easy. Well, it would have been easier a few years ago, but it's still possible. They need to start making shorter, lower budget games, but really fun ones, memorable ones. They need to stop making female characters ugly on purpose. There's nothing wrong with the protagonist being a girl, but if you're going to stare at the character for 30 hours while playing, at least make her nice to look at. Drop the woke sermons and then they slash them characters that lecture you about trans rights and how being a straight white male is bad, when 80% of the people playing are straight males, and many of them are white. The model of releasing exclusives on other consoles is good, but don't make it instant. Let them come to Game Pass first, and then 3 months later, release them on PlayStation and Steam, like they did with Palworld. And keep at it consistently, because it's going to take years to regain trust. In the end, they could make a comeback. But Shura, what can I do? What am I supposed to do as a player to make a difference? Well, my dear Game Pass player, the best thing would be to buy a game you really liked, but of course, there are those of us who cannot do that, and that's okay. But at the very least, you can leave a review for the game. Every time you play a game, go to the store and leave your opinion, whether it was good, bad, and write how you felt playing it. Be as exaggerated as you want. It doesn't matter. That way, Xbox can see what their own users want, not just outside players, but what their own users desire. And that's how they might start to change. If you can't buy the full game, that's fine, but if you really liked it and have some extra money, you can buy its DLC. They're not as expensive as the full game, but they still help financially. If you like a game, go to its social media and leave a meme or a comment. It might seem small, but positive traffic on social media also shows companies what you really want to play. All of this will only take you a few seconds, and in the long run, it can make a big difference for our future. After all the crap I've thrown at Xbox, I really do love it, and if I made a 3-hour video talking about all the bad things they've done, it's because I want them to improve, to learn from their mistakes, to change everything for the better, and, like I said in the video about Chinese games, for this whole woke and horrible era of our beloved industry to be nothing but a distant, forgotten memory in a few years. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out the stories and my social media in the description. And on Patreon we have some super cool and spicy rewards at $6 for the highest subscription. Come in, take your hot and frothy subscription. I've been Shura, and I'll see you in the next one.
Siempre lucharé por ti con mi alma eléctrica.